We're honored to be the first non-European country as part of the EU SAFE initiative. We would observe that in the last year, we have struck $18 billion worth of critical minerals deals across 20 of the world's leading critical minerals. We're working with European partners across the technology stack, from hardware, cloud infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and space. We are an energy superpower, third largest oil producer, fourth largest natural gas, largest hydro renewable base. We're committed to addressing climate change while providing reliable, affordable energy to our citizens and partners. It's my strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt out of Europe.
So that is Prime Minister Mark Carney, first Canadian Prime Minister, by the way, ever to visit Armenia, leaving and addressing, I guess, those member nations that attended. David Heurtel is standing by, former Quebec Liberal cabinet minister, political analyst now. And David, this whole idea, this came up like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, of Canada, the EU. Clearly, this step by Mark Carney to show up there for this conference seems to almost be an indication that Canada is getting closer and closer to accepting an invitation to be part of the EU. Is that even possible?
Well, I mean, anything is possible, but Minister Anita Anand, who is accompanying the Prime Minister on this trip, was very clear over the weekend, saying that that's not the goal. I think what the Prime Minister is doing, and Europe is definitely letting him do it, is working and collaborating. And as you said, these conferences, these types of EU conferences happen twice a year, and it's the first time that a leader, the leader of a government that is not a member of the EU has been invited to this conference specifically and was able to speak. It just shows, again, we've been talking about this regularly over the past few days and weeks, that the Prime Minister, and he's staying right in line with what he said in the Davos speech. The world order has changed, and we're not coming back to the old ways. And so there is the United States, there's China, and whoever is orbiting around those two powers, and there is Europe. And right now, Canada's plan, and everything that's been done over the last few weeks and months during the Carney administration, has been to diversify the economy. The Sovereign Wealth Fund is one of the latest examples of that. And what he's doing is continuing to develop, along with Europe, this bloc, which is going to be a bloc that is going to be right on par with both the Chinese and U.S. economies. And I think what Mark Carney is doing is justified, and sending a clear message to the Trump administration that Canada will not be bullied, and that if we cannot find a way to strike a deal that is advantageous for both Canada and the U.S. in the upcoming trade talks, then, we are developing other options, and that includes Europe, and that includes the Pacific Rim.
I'm going to move on. I just want to point out again this idea of a new international order, which, post Davos, this is what we're starting to hear on a pretty regular basis from the Prime Minister. It's obviously resonating, right, in Europe. Yes. We have a move the other day where the President Trump said they're pulling 5,000 American troops out of Germany. So while the U.S. is busy fighting with Europe, we're busy cozying up to Europe, right?
We're cozying up, but it's a win-win for both. It's trying to find a win-win. And Canada, there's a lot of runway to develop both Europe's economy and Canada's economy through different partnerships. Look, Europe is solidifying. I mean, ever since the Ukraine war and what Trump has done, what has it done? It has strengthened NATO. I mean, countries have joined NATO. European countries that have stayed neutral for decades have now joined NATO. Europe is stronger than ever. The failure of Brexit shows even the UK wishes it was back with Europe, and is trying to basically find a way to at least get closer and be as close as possible to Europe without coming back. But the idea is that for Canada, there's a lot of positives in diversifying our economy. We've been too dependent, overly dependent on the U.S. economy, and it makes sense for everyone, and it's in everybody's interest to develop further.
So let me bring this back home. Played a clip on the news about Christine Frechette. I guess this doesn't come as a big surprise. We talked about this originally. We got a federal break as far as gas tax is concerned. The story a couple of weeks ago before the welcome tax announcement by her and, the other announcements which had to do with, the small, medium-sized businesses. There has been no cut in the provincial gas tax, which David, it would have seemed to me that was a pretty easy gimme. Today, she basically came out and said it's not going to happen, and she's considering, I think, maybe somehow cutting what you pay when you register your vehicle, something that's gone up virtually every single year, I think. What do you make of this?
Well, I think there are two main reasons for this. One, I think, contrary to the federal government, we don't have a lot of financial breathing room in Quebec. And I don't think Éric Girard projected a gas tax cut, and I think he needs the money, and I think Quebec needs the money much more than the federal government does, and two, the other reason, and I think that's more important, because there's always this argument, right? Some economists are saying, if you bring down the gas tax, well, the oil companies are going to take advantage of it, and ultimately it may not all get to the pockets of the consumer.
Okay.
And so the idea here, with the very little time Christine Frechette has before the election, she needs measures that will impact people right now. And everybody is getting their renewal notices for their registration. If they get a credit or if it's a reimbursement or reduction, I think that is a much more concrete way of showing, hey, I'm feeling your pain and I'm doing something real about it.
Okay, interesting take. I want to ask you finally, PSPP, so Passé Pierre Plamondon. I guess he's not going to be talking about, separation or referendum very much. So instead today he shifts his focus to say he would like to reduce homelessness here by, wait for it, 50% by the year 2030. He's going to make it the major social priority of his first year of a Parti Québécois government. David, is this a shift of focus? Look, they're not here?
Yes, it is. And it's, first of all, he didn't say how magically he was going to do that. He was very general in the interview and in his post, because what it shows is that he has finally understood that Quebecers are sick and tired of hearing about a referendum and talking about independence. They don't want to hear about that. And when I say that, I always want to specify a majority of Francophones, not Quebecers overall, a majority of Francophones are saying clearly we're in the 60% and up, saying we don't want to hear about a referendum and we're against independence. And so what the polling is showing with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon just barely, hovering, he's around 30, 31%, 32%. He's not growing right now. He's been stalled basically since last fall. And he had an uptick during the Pablo Rodriguez scandal, but that, as we all know, was temporary, of course. So he now has to talk about issues that connect directly with everyday lives of Quebecers, and talking about issues that connect also with writings that either he currently holds or he is gunning for in the next election. Now, the problem with all of that is that he isn't used to that. He doesn't have a lot of expertise on these issues. So, for example, the homeless, besides, giving a very ambitious goal, he hasn't said anything about how he's going to do it, where he's going to find the money to do it. And anytime you talk about homelessness, you're going to have to talk about health and social services, because as we know, he throws things, I'm going to copy the Houston model. Well, if you're going to copy the Houston model, Aaron, I know something about this. First of all, you're talking about building thousands of homes for these people, for the unhoused. And that doesn't happen automatically, as our mayor and our prime minister and our premier know.
Right.
And so you have to find the money for that. And also, you're talking about health and social services because a lot of the people who are unhoused have other health problems, such as some sort of chemical dependence or other. And so you're talking about a lot of different issues. Paul Saint-Pierre has not talked about this. He has no expertise in this. So what he's trying to show that he's going to have to connect with Quebecers on their priorities, but it's a very small step and no details.
You know, if I can, I want to, just to close, David, you know, when we talk about the homeless situation, we know this is part of the mayor's, you know, agenda, right? This is part of her platform. We know that was one of her first steps, cleaning up some of these areas as well. You know, I asked our listeners, and I'm going to come back and do this in just a moment or so. One of the key parts in her platform was in getting the city clean, or, you know, and cleanliness was sort of a big factor for her. Now, the city, as I said, needs to lead by example here. They've done that to a degree, but obviously I don't think enough that people have now decided, oh, look what the city's doing, I'm going to follow suit. In fact, we found out today in a La Presse article, there have been more tickets handed out this year for over litter and garbage than there were in all of 2024. When I say lead by example, can the city do that? Do you think they can make this change?
They should, and they can. But look, there was a big announcement. It was at the end of March, right? Where there's going to be this whole new offensive on cleaning up the city. Do you sense it? I'm downtown. I live downtown. I walk every day. I'm out 2.5 hours with my dog at least every day. You don't sense that it's getting better. And I'm talking about garbage cans overflowing, and you don't sense that there are more, city workers, and there's an effort, and there's something happening. And a lot of media have been covering this since the March announcement, and you don't sense it. But on the other hand, what is true though, and other major cities, if you look at Toronto, you look at New York City, you could go down the list, we are not doing nearly enough to implement and sanction not the disrespect of our bylaws, and people have a responsibility, and we have to hold the people accountable as well. I mean, some places are just filthy all the time, and building owners have to take responsibility as well.
And that's what I'm going to come back to. David, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.